Hi, and welcome to Shakey's podcast. Got a really interesting guest lined up for you today. Something very different to I've ever done on the channel before. You know, we've had sports people, politicians, lawyers, you name it. We've had a bit of everything. This guy is very different in a good way. He's a vlogger, a man who travels around the world quite often. The catch being that he visits places that your mum would rather you didn't. He's got quite a story, and we're going to go through all of it today. I'm talking about a man who's born and raised in Coatbridge, Scotland, um, doing wonderful things on his social media platforms and his journey, and we're going to go through all of it. I'm talking about the famous Callum abroad. Hello and assalamu alaikum, Callum. How are you, brother?
I am very well, bro. You're a hard man to get hold of.
You're having a laugh, Callum. You are having a laugh. Just to paint the scene here, I've been trying to get this guy for about 10, 11 months. We got there in the end, but that's just a bit of banter between us two. Um, Callum, I'm just going to go right from the top. You know you're raised and you were born and you've lived a lot of your life in Coatbridge in Scotland. What was it like growing up in Coatbridge? What was it like with diversity? Just tell me a bit about it.
Growing up in Coatbridge, there wasn't. I still don't think there's much diversity in Coatbridge, if I'm being honest with you. Not compared to other places like Glasgow and like your Govan Hills and places like that. But Coatbridge, when I was younger, I used to think, I cannot wait to leave Coatbridge. I can't wait to get out of this place. But I've been to some places where I've thought, do you know what? Coatbridge isn't that bad.
Good on you for stepping up for Coatbridge. I've played a lot of cricket in Coatbridge, Langloan, Drumpelia Cricket Club. I've got a lot of fond memories around that part of Scotland. So big up Coatbridge, and good to hear that you've got some good memories of growing up there. So Callum, this whole journey for you started back at COVID times with the diaries and starting to travel. You were at university, I believe, but you paint the picture for me how this journey all got underway.
Yeah, I was at the University of the West of Scotland during the full COVID coronavirus thing, and I was going into my third year of my nursing degree, and they told us don't come to uni, don't go to placement, basically just stay in the house. And I was getting cabin fever, really bad cabin fever, and I don't know. I just said stuff it. I'm going to pack a bag and the only country that would take me at that time was Egypt. It's the only country that would allow me to travel. So I flew to Egypt and I've not stopped since, basically. That's the truth. I've just not stopped since.
So, How was Egypt when you went there at that point?
Egypt was good. It's interesting because a lot of people go to Egypt and they go to places like Sharm el Sheikh and they'll take like day trips to the pyramids. But I decided to go and stay in downtown Giza. And that was eye opening, let me tell you. There's also a place in Giza. The locals call it Garbage City. So basically, the Coptic Christians in Giza and Cairo, they go about the city and they collect all the garbage and they take it back to their area and they sort through it and recycle it. So I was told, don't go there, it's very dangerous. So I decided, right, let's go. So I went there and I sort of get chased out, literally. Like, I was told to leave immediately and people were following me and it wasn't. But that gave me a little bit of a buzz, if I'm being honest with you. And then it was at that moment I thought, I kind of like this sort of travel vlogging stuff, and that set the scene to then go to Syria, which was my next adventure. But yeah, my first trip was Egypt. It's I'm not going to sit and I'm trying to be nice in the sense where when you look at the millions and millions of people that go to the pyramids every year, I don't know if you have you been before. Have you been yourself?
I've been to Sharm el Sheikh, but I really
Have you been?
haven't seen it before.
Right. Okay. Well, downtown Giza is, and I'm going to say it, it's not good. It's not good at all. There's dead donkeys lying in the street. There's camels just lying there, people stepping over them. I was shocked at that because I thought there's millions and millions of people going there every year to see the pyramids, and that was eye opening. So I think downtown Giza really set the motion for me to go and explore the world and try and sort of see it with my own eyes rather than just seeing it on TV.
We're going to come to Syria as well after this. Don't you worry. I want to hear a bit more about that. But it's just fascinating to hear where you got started, Callum. Egypt, didn't know that was the first place that you went to. Sounds like it was a very different experience to anything you've probably ever encountered. But that's where you kind of got. You said you got that kind of buzz that I want a bit more. I want to explore more.
Yeah, yeah, that was the first time I thought, wow, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Therefore, I thought, what other countries are going to be like that? So that sort of really set the motion for me to go and explore.
Just before we get into, as I've called, the wild stuff that we're going to get into, that some people would think is wild. A boy from Coatbridge decides to go to all these places. It's quite remarkable. But prior to that, you've now got over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. You've got well over 100,000 on Instagram and TikTok. And I guess my question is, how do you think you've achieved that? And how do you think people connect with your content so much? Do you think it's just because you're just a normal guy like the rest of us, you and I, just normal people, and you've taken yourself out there? What do you think it might be?
Well, I think personally that you look at all these news channels and media, a lot of them are spinning their own narrative. Whereas I'm just a guy on the street, a random guy, just going and exploring it, seeing it for what it is. I've not really got an agenda, so I'll show them the reality, and there is no bias towards it. So I think a lot of people respect that, and I don't think anybody in today's world can disagree that a lot of these media channels have got an agenda.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I'm happy to put that on record that they absolutely do. And I prefer now to follow people like yourself, who go out there and actually show us what's going on in all these different countries. And some of the places that Callum's been to, you're going to be amazed if you've not followed this guy yet and seen what he's done. But he's been to some places in the world, as I said, that your mum would probably rather you didn't go to, and that's what's fascinating about Callum. But look, from my point of view, first and foremost, congratulations on your 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. Hell of a lot of
Thank
work
you.
you've. I've been following your journey for a long time, and I just want to put it out there. Proud of you for what you've achieved, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do next. Right, let's get into the quick fire questions on the wild stuff. What I'm going to do here is I'm just going to throw countries at you that I know you've been to. And I want you to just let your mind wander and share the stories and experiences that you've had in these countries, um, whatever it may be. So
Okay, let's go.
the one I'm going to start with is you went to Afghanistan of all places, known as a bit of a hot zone. You met the Taliban and were detained by the Taliban. I think it's a good place to start. What happened and what made you go there?
Right, okay. So I was in Pakistan at the time, but we can certainly go back to Pakistan. And I decided that I was going to cross the border and go into Afghanistan. So the Torkham border is notorious for it's very chaotic. When I arrived, you can sort of get put into a little cage, and you all have to go single file, and there's people getting whipped, and I'm standing there and I'm watching these people getting whipped, and I'm like, oh, have I made a mistake here? So as I'm going through, the Taliban stopped me, and they're like, oh, sit over here, and it was like a little cage they sat me in, and I'm like, right, okay, what's going on? Am I getting like arrested? So I was starting to get a little bit nervous, and these two Taliban members came up to me. One had a white headband and a red headband, and I'm thinking, right, let's just try and make some small talk just to sort of ease the tension. And I'm like, oh, the headbands, can I get one of them souvenir? What does it mean? And he's like, white headband. He's like, no problem. He's like, red headband, boom. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then someone explained that the people with the red headbands, they've basically dedicated their life to, if the call comes, that they'll basically blow themselves up or they'll kill themselves for the Taliban, and I'm sitting there in that cage, and I'm going, "Holy Jesus, have I bit off more than I can chew here?" So that was my first entry into Afghanistan. The people of Afghanistan are actually very friendly. I don't know, obviously, the Western media, and we've grown up seeing Afghanistan on the news, and it's always negative, it's always war. But the people of Afghanistan were very friendly, very welcoming, smiley, want to make food, like they're really nice people. The Taliban is very interesting because obviously growing up, we hear bad things about the Taliban and fighting the like, sort of the British soldiers. So everything you hear is always negative. But when the Taliban detained me for questioning, it was simple questioning like, "Are you in the military? Was your dad in the military? Are you Muslim?" This is basic stuff. And then they made me a cup of tea. I think the biggest shock that I got from the Taliban was I was speaking to some young Taliban members, and they told me the only reason they joined the Taliban was because they get $100 a month. Not because like they hate the West or anything to do with that. They just it was $100 a month, and coming from the sort of the mountainside, $100 a month's a lot of money. So the young Taliban, and they're very tech savvy. The young Taliban now are very tech savvy. They'll pull up their phone, they've got the TikTok, Instagram, and very tech savvy as well, which I was pretty surprised about.
So then, when you just like, how long were you in Afghanistan for?
I was in Afghanistan for about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. Went to see the Buddhist temples or what's left of them in Bamyan. Explored Kabul, explored the markets. It's it is a beautiful country, and I mean that genuinely. It really is. It's a beautiful country. It's strange. You see a lot of like Chinese influence in the country now. A lot of roads that are getting built, and all the signs have all got Chinese writing on them. So I was surprised that how friendly the locals were. I thought there was going to be a little bit. I thought it was going to be a little bit more tense, a little bit more standoffish, and not want to approach me or talk to me. But that wasn't the case. I was pleasantly surprised with Afghanistan. And again, the Taliban. I'm not sitting here saying the Taliban are good or bad or whatever, but there is some young members of the Taliban who joined simply to feed their family and get $100 a month. And they told me that joining the Taliban doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have to go and fight. You could be on like road checkpoints, for example. So there's obviously different sects of the Taliban and what you do. So it's a very it's a very interesting country. So it's very interesting.
Well, apart from the fact that you got detained and put in a small cage to start the experience, it sounds like the rest of the experience for you was quite pleasant enough in Afghanistan.
I broke down actually. The car broke down in the mountains, and we seen some people sitting at the side of the road, and I thought they were Bedouin people. There's a lot of Bedouins that travel through Afghanistan, graze their animals, and just pitch up their tent as they go. So I seen a group of people sitting, and I decided, let's go over to them and ask them if I've got any tea. So I went over, I asked them, and I had a translator with me, and he turned to me and he's like, brother, these are Mujahideen. And I looked at him and he looked at me and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. So the Mujahideen said to me, I'll come and sit down and we'll have some tea. So we sat down. As I sat down, I noticed one of the guys had a plastic foot. And I asked my translator, I said, what's the deal with that? And he's like, he spoke to him and he says, yeah, the Russians blew it off in the war. And I'm like, right, okay. So I was asking them questions and then they turned to me and the translator and they said, are you Muslim? And I said, no. And he says, let's take a Shahada now. And one of them had a Quran and he's like, let's do it now. So I'm thinking on my feet and I'm like, I'm not taking my Shahada. So I said to my translator, I says, please tell them this. I said, if I'm destined to be a Muslim or a Christian or anything, then surely I should feel it in my heart and not do it just because you're telling me to do it. And I thought he was going to buy it. And the translator said to him, and he turned back to me and he says, nah, he says that's not how it works. Let's just do it the now. And my face dropped, and I'm like, oh, I need to get out of here. So I quickly drank the tea and I just thanked him and I sort of walked off, hoping that nothing would happen. And sure enough, it didn't. So that was an interesting meeting with the Mujahideen in the mountains.
Wow. Okay, next country. You mentioned it already when we were talking earlier. Syria. I believe you went there when it was under the
Yeah,
Bashir Assad regime. What was your
yeah. So
experience?
I driving into. I travelled to Lebanon and I drove through the land border, up over the mountains, and then into Damascus. When you're driving into Syria, you see the burnt out, or at that time, you see the burnt out cars and all the destruction. The destruction is everywhere, and I thought, I was a little bit tense going into Syria. Again, had a wonderful time. The people were very friendly. The food was amazing. I was pleasantly surprised. I was seeing alcohol shops in the centre of Damascus, things that you never see on the news, you never hear about. So I was pretty surprised at that. However, the Syria trip wasn't without controversy. So I ended up on Syrian news, and it says they put me up on the news next to Kim Jong Un, and my social media exploded, and I was like, "What's this?" And it turns out that they put me on Syrian news saying that because I videoed one of the checkpoints and I explained that we had to give some people some money to get through, they put me on Syrian news to say that instead of meeting up and polishing the Assad regime and his men, I exposed their corruption and they were actively looking for me. And I was all over Syrian news, and I thought, wow, I had all these Syrian news companies reach out to me for comments, and it was something so simple. All I did was say that I was coming close to a checkpoint, and all I said was, we're having to give some of these people some money just to sort of let us through nice and easy so that we don't get a full shakedown. That was all I said, and all hell broke loose, and I was all over the news. And that's when my mum was like, right, don't go back there. I don't want you going anywhere dangerous. And because that was sort of the real first place that I went that had a really bad reputation.
Can I put it
And
out
then
there?
my
Can I
mum
just
was
put it out there?
one.
You didn't listen, did you?
No, that sort of fueled the fire again, and then I ended up going even further again. But it was the first time I've faced some backlash as well, because at that time it felt like half of Syria loved Assad and the other half wanted to oust him. Obviously, he's gone now, but at that time I was sort of getting a lot of hate from which felt like half of Syria and a lot of love from the other half. So it was the first time I felt some controversy, a little bit of backlash. And I remember getting a little bit anxious about it, going, I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I'm cut out for this, because I was waking up with a lot of hate in my DMs. Now it's like water off a duck's back. I could paper the living room house with the amount of hate that I get. But that was the first time I faced controversy, and I thought, I don't know how to respond to this.
Fascinating to listen to. I'm trying to put myself just kind of in your shoes for a second. You know, these are dangerous countries with some very dangerous people, lurking and whatnot. Did you never have was there a fear of your life, like when that kind of experience was happening?
I mean, now I've had a lot more situations where I've feared for my life, but at that time I was more concerned about the backlash. And I think when you first start making content and putting it online, I think you're very wary of how you come across to people, and you sort of want everybody to like you. Basically, that's the truth. And it takes a little bit of time to realise that that's never going to happen. So at that time, I was a little bit concerned on how I was being portrayed, and whether people understood the reason why I was there. And I was just there to explore. I wasn't there to big up Assad or promote Assad. I was just simply there to see the country as it is and experience it for myself, rather than just watching it on TV.
That's a really interesting point you just made, Callum. I was probably very similar to you. When you start out in that social media world, and you just want to you want to put good stuff out there, but you want everybody to like you, and there
Yeah.
is no way that is possible, as you've come to learn, and we'll talk about a lot more along the way in this. The next one I'm going to go on to. Now, this is mental to me, but I'm curious, very curious to hear this story. There's a famous chap from Colombia called Pablo Escobar. There's a series on Netflix about him. He's known worldwide, and you met his brother, I believe. can you just tell me a wee bit about your experience in Colombia and meeting Pablo Escobar's brother?
Okay. I flew to Colombia and I spent some time. Firstly, we'll start in Bogota. So I spent some time in Bogota, and there's a place in Bogota called the Bronx of Bogota, and I was told don't go there. Very, very dangerous, especially for a white foreigner, basically. So I decided to go there. Later that night, there was a big festival thing on. There was like a big party. I went to that. Later on that night, I got chased under a bridge. It was very sketchy, very dangerous. I feared for my life under that bridge in Bogota. But I decided to take a flight to Medellin, Colombia, which is obviously notoriously known for like the cartel and the Escobars. So I went there, and the first day I got there, I went to the graveside of Pablo Escobar, and I'm standing there and I'm looking at the grave, and I was making my vlog, and someone said, "Well, where are you from?" And I said, "Scotland." And he's like, "Oh, why are you here?" I said, "I just came to have a little look. I'm a tourist." He says, "Oh, do you know Roberto, Pablo's brother?" And I said, "No." He's like, "Do you want to come up to the house and meet him?" And at that point, this is just a random stranger standing next to me, and I'm like, this guy's talking nonsense. He's at it, but he was sort of insisting. He's like, "Come up." He's like, you can meet the Escobars, you can meet Roberto." And I'm like, I don't know why. I just decided, right, okay, let's do it. Let's go with it. Got in the car, went up. Sure enough, right into the Escobars, right into Roberto Escobar's house. It turns out he was actually part of the family, and I thought, wow. I had a conversation with Roberto. He was telling me that all this new narco stuff is he's not happy about it because Netflix didn't reach out to him. The way he's portrayed in the movie, he says it's completely false. He wishes that Netflix had come out and spoke to him and got his insight into it. They never asked him apparently at all. Didn't ask him a thing. So he's not happy. He said a lot of it's not true. Um, he said he actually had friends in Scotland, which I was very surprised about. He's like, "Oh, Scotland." He's like, "I've got a lot of friends in Scotland, good friends in Scotland," and I'm thinking to myself, who in God's earth was friends with Roberto Escobar in Scotland?
I'm
So
sure they went.
Colombia was. I don't think Colombia is. It's certainly got a sketchy vibe at night when the sun goes down. I went to meet a drug dealer to make a video. Let's just make that clear to make a video. And he came up to the hotel room, and it was the night before I flew out of Colombia. And there's a viral video. There's a video of me on social media where I'm pouring 12 grams of Colombian cocaine down the sink. So he left it all in the room, and I messaged him back. I was like, "Brother, you're going to need to come and get this stuff. Like, I'm flying out in the morning." And he's like, he was acting sketchy, and I think he thought maybe this was a setup. So he refused to come back and get the drugs. So I'm like, I can't just leave these drugs in the room in case someone gets a hold of them. So there's a video of me pouring 12 grams of Colombian cocaine down the sink. And I made the video because I thought, right, if I go to the airport the next day and the sniffer dogs stop me, at least I can say, look, there's the video. It was an interview, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, the next day I got to Medellin airport. Sure enough, I'm standing in the queue. The dog stops between me and the guy in front of me. And I'm like, oh, here we go, here we go. By the time they had spoke to the guy in front, I managed to get to the front of the queue and sort of get through no problem. But that was my experience in Colombia. I've actually been back to Colombia several times since.
Do you have any concept of stranger danger?
I think you go with your instincts in these places. You can sort of get the vibe, and I think you can tell whether someone's been really sketchy or whether they're okay. So I think going with your gut. So far, it seems to have worked for me over the last few years, but I might come a cropper one day where I make a backside of it and something goes wrong. But it's that's part of traveling, really. I think if you play it safe, if you play it safe all the time, you're never going to really get the full experience. And I think in order to understand a country, you've got to sort of go in and see all aspects of society to get the full fabric of it.
No, I agree, and there's no doubt that you do that and some more. But I mean, when I'm listening to you, I'm just thinking to myself. I mean, we're not talking about you know some just random person that spoke to you in Colombia and said, "Come to my house for some food." We're talking about some big kingpins there, cartels, etc. People, I watch a lot of these Netflix documentaries, and people disappear. It's just when I'm listening to you, I'm just thinking you're very brave. Do you think your kind of Scottish street savviness helps you in a lot of these situations?
I'll be honest with you. I think the Scottish people are very well received across the world. I really do believe that. When you
I agree.
say a lot of people seem to, I get the theme, and I'm not saying this is true by any stretch, but I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, Scottish. Oh, I like Scotland better than England." I don't know why. Maybe it's the colonial past that sort of England's sort of got a bigger reputation for. The Scottish people are very well received anywhere I've went. Someone always says, "Oh, Scotland," and they'll make reference to Braveheart or something Scottish. So Scottish people are very well received, I think, across the world.
I completely agree with you. I mean, sometimes it's a surprise to some people. Obviously, I've got a wee bit of complexion, a wee bit of person of colour, with a mixed background. But when I come out with a Scottish accent, it's always like, "You from Scotland?" Yeah. And I have to say, my experience. I mean, I've been to Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, to name a few. They love the Scottish, and I do tend to get a comment after it saying, "Oh, we love the Scottish, but we don't like, we
Yeah,
don't
it's
like."
always seems. I feel like every time someone says, "Oh, I love the Scotland," they always throw in the, "I don't really like the English," and I'm like, I don't like. Obviously, there's some amazing people in England, so I just feel like it's always Scotland always seems to get a good reputation. I don't know why, because a lot of us are absolute nutters. But it's good though. It's good, and a lot of people seem to know things about Scotland that I'm pretty surprised about. They'll name places, or they'll always say Rangers and Celtic. That always comes
Rangers.
up. Oh, it's crazy how many people. I could be in the favelas in Brazil with the gangs or something, and somebody will mention Rangers and Celtic, and I'll be like, what? It's strange.
It's brilliant to listen to. And by the way, shout out to all my English mates out there. There's no hate in this podcast. We're both proud Scotsmen, but we've got a lot of love for our English brothers and sisters as well. Okay, next place. This is an interesting one as well. Again, some would say very dangerous. Um, USA Chicago. You're with the Black Disciples gang. How did
Yeah, I
that
went
come?
to. I went to Dallas. I spent time in Dallas, and I think I did about 12 states. But I got up to Chicago, and I decided to try and reach out to a few people via a contact on Instagram, and it was a bit sketchy. They told me to come, then they told me not to come, and then they took me to a house to park up and sort of suss me out. But once they sussed out that I was literally just a Scottish guy with a camera, they sort of let me into the house that they're all staying at. Very interesting characters. America. A lot of people say to me, "Oh, isn't it dangerous going to Afghanistan and Syria, Iraq, these places?" But America on the south side of Chicago has a very sketchy feel at night. People just walking about, they're armed. I mean, as you've seen on the videos, the guys are just walking next to me on the street and they've got the guns out, and I was thinking, wow, I can't believe this is America. I know guns are legal in America, but these sort of gangs are so brazen about it. They don't hide the weapons, they're just walking about, and I'm like, it's it's interesting though. I spoke to some of the gang members and they were saying, no, I'm at college, I'm getting my, whether it was an apprenticeship in something, I think it was electrician or something. I've got a family, and I was thinking to myself, like, it feels like it's just a, it's a, they're a product of their environment. So when you speak to them, they're nice people. They're going to college. They're looking after their family, but they're a product of their environment. And if everyone or all the youth in that area are in gangs, then the likelihood is they're going to join a gang to fit in as well. So I can see why some people might look at it and go, "No, these people are thugs. They're selling drugs. They're in gangs." But when you actually have a proper conversation with them, it's interesting to hear how that came about. But it's a very south side of Chicago is. I would say I was more concerned walking about the south side of Chicago than I was in Afghanistan.
That would sound crazy, I think, to most people because everyone's just got
Mm.
this opinion that Afghanistan is like a constant war zone, or the media portrays it like that. You sound like after your original entry to Afghanistan, you were all right. Whereas walking around,
I think a large part of that though comes from in the countries such as like Afghanistan, Pakistan. These people are very proud of their hospitality and they want to make sure tourists are having a good time, make sure they're looked after. Whereas in the West, we're not like that. It's just that, oh, there's another tourist. It's not like that at all. So I think that makes a difference on how you feel walking about as a traveller. Because in these countries, they want to make sure that you're okay. In the West, you don't get a second look, basically, in my opinion.
you're very trusting to be around these kind of that kind of environment. Did you ever, like you said, you had times where you were feeling on edge. What did you feel like after you sat with these guys? You've obviously sounded to me like you realised that they're a product of their environment. But did you ever feel like did you get to the point where you felt genuinely comfortable around them? Or I've seen
Well,
a
it
picture
got yeah.
with them and
I
they've
was
all
that
got guns.
comfortable. I was that comfortable. I ended up going to the shop with them. I went to the local shop, and I got myself a bottle of MD, which is obviously very well known in Scotland. A bottle of Mad Dog, and I went to the studio with them, and we sat and had a drink, and they were rapping, and the guns were out. So yeah, I actually still speak to them. I speak to them to this day. One of them just messaged me about 10 days ago saying, "Oh, hey, bro, how are you? I just got out of prison. When are you coming back to hang out with the boys?" So yeah, it got pretty comfortable. And like I says, people might see their social media and they'll see all the guns and stuff, but when I spoke to them, they actually did seem like decent guys, and they were just sort of caught up in that because of where they stay, basically.
Yeah, which we see a lot of in our doorstep in Scotland, for instance. Certain deprived areas around Scotland. People
Yeah.
have not got the same opportunity that maybe some other people have got. It's very easy to get into crime and other areas.
Well,
So
that's it's funny. It's funny you say that because that was the same vibe that I got when I went to meet the drugs gangs in the favela in Brazil. I was speaking to them, and they told me that the reality is, as they says, as a black person with the address of living in the favelas, when I apply for a job, firstly, oh, you're black. Secondly, oh, what's your address? Where do you come from? Oh, you come from the favelas, which is obviously notorious. It says basically the application is just thrown in the bin. It says it's very, very difficult to get a job if you live inside the favela. Most jobs in Brazil or in Rio are all down on the Copacabana. It says, but as soon as you apply for the job and you put your address as the favela, it says it's extremely difficult. So therefore, that's why a lot of the people in the favelas they turn to crime and things like that as well. So it's interesting to. That's not really the stuff you see videos of these people online, but you never really think deeper in that and why they're in that situation.
yeah, I know we can often probably be quite judgmental, but I mean that sounds like they're practically held ransom to have to go into that type of life because they can't really apply to go elsewhere. That may not be the right term to use, but got along. It's kind of like, oh, you're born there, but you're not going to get the same opportunity as another person, even though you might have the talent to do it. So what are you then going to do? I mean, I look back at a lot of the rappers and stuff I listened to when I was young. They rapped about a lot of this kind of stuff. How
Well,
how do
here's
these
the funny thing as well. When I was in Brazil, I felt more safe in the. Someone tried to rob me and down in Copacabana, and I felt more safe in the favelas. And they were telling me that when a tourist comes into the favelas, everyone's instructed, like just as a general understanding that don't do anything to a tourist while they're in the favela. The reason being, if you attract the police to then come to the favela, that's when the shootouts happen, and so I felt more safe. And they told me that the general feel is take care of tourists in the favela, make sure they're okay, don't attract any attention from the police to the favela. And a lot of people that do the pickpocketing and the robbing and stuff, they all come down from the favelas down onto Copacabana Beach during the day, they commit their crimes down there, and then they go back into the favelas. So I actually felt safer in the favela than I did walking about down in Copacabana. I was walking down there and someone tried. I came out of McDonald's and I had my McDonald's in one hand and a McFlurry in the other hand, and I had my phone up to my ear. So I'm on the phone and I'm walking my McDonald's, and I seen these two guys that came. They were looking at me, and I knew something was going to happen. So one of them tried to reach and grab my phone. I moved out the way. I dropped my McFlurry on the floor, and I was like, "Oh!" And everybody's just looking at me. Nobody was there to help. Everybody's just looking as if it's very normal. So I personally felt so much safer in the favelas than Copacabana Beach. And if they don't show you that, they don't tell you that in the brochures. You see Copacabana Beach and you go, "Wow, that looks amazing. It's voted one of the best beaches in the world." Trust me, you feel safer walking about the favelas.
That's mad. Never have thought. I would have always thought to myself, Favelas going up there, that's
Yeah.
dangerous. But I mean, it just shows you again from you being on the ground and actually being in these places, you can actually give a much more rounded opinion than what we get
Mhm.
a lot of the time from the media. Another reason why I think the work that you do is fantastic. Even though I'm sitting listening to you right now, thinking he's some boy. I say that to you regularly when we're talking. I just say, "You're some boy, Callum." This next one, I've not actually heard the story about this one. Oklahoma, you snuck in to Joe Exotic's zoo. How
Yeah.
did that come about?
Um, well, it was right about the time where it was just after the Tiger King and the series, because that was obviously that was viral across the world. And I just happened to be speaking to my mate in Dallas, and I asked him if he'd seen it, and he said no. And obviously Oklahoma is a and in terms of American standards, it's a short drive from Dallas to Oklahoma. And I said, right, why don't we sneak into the zoo? And a couple of my mates are like, "No, I don't know. Like you're on a visa, like a tourist visa. You don't want to be doing anything like that." But we went up. We went up very early, about eight a.m. in the morning, and I took the drone with me. We put the drone up over the zoo. Everything looked nice and quiet. Straight in, we went walking about, open all the doors, checking everything out. Obviously, you see parts of the zoo that you remember on the TV show. So it was interesting to see it. And then all of a sudden, some guy appeared out of nowhere. And my mates started running. We're all running. I'm sort of sweating, but yeah, we snuck into the zoo and we had a little look about and see if there was anything there. There's a lot of graffiti, anti Carol Baskin graffiti. If anybody's seen the show, you'll know that she now owns the zoo. But yeah, we snuck into the zoo shortly after the series ended, just to have a little look and see how it was getting on.
You're some boy, Callum. You're some boy. Um, you were in Ukraine not so long ago during the war, I believe.
Yeah.
Again, can you give me some insights separate from what we see in the media and know in the media of what you actually seen on the ground and what you took away from it?
Yeah, well, I get close. I actually get less than 800 meters away from the Russians. When they blew up the dam, I was in Kherson. It's very interesting. It's a sad, sad situation. I spoke to Ukrainians there, and they were telling me that they don't think. Obviously, it's a little bit different now because Putin's now speaking to Donald Trump, so things are starting to look just a little bit better. But they told me that they think at least it'll go for 10 years, and they're prepared to die. And I was in Odessa. I spoke to some youth in Odessa, and they said they're not leaving Odessa. They're prepared to die for Ukraine, and they're very scared. They're very scared. They told me that you'll find that it's some of the elder generation that are in places like Odessa that they are very pro Putin compared to the youth who are very pro like Ukraine. I'm not saying they're pro Zelensky because there is mixed feelings about Zelensky, but they're very pro Ukraine, whereas some of the elder generation would be happy to go back and be part of Russia. So that was a very interesting take. I remember
I thought
sitting on the
it might have been the other way around almost.
Well, yeah, I was surprised. I was surprised to learn that. I was sitting on a balcony in Odessa, and the sort of the bombs started going off, and it's very scary. There's I think like let's say 1 year ago there was a lot of rumors going about on social media saying, "Oh, look at all these young Ukrainians are all partying in this bar. Where's this so-called war?" But the reality is they try to just keep life as normal as they can. Life goes on while this is happening. They can't just ground to a halt. So it was interesting to see Ukraine like on a Friday and Saturday night and speak to people. And the reality is, people are scared. They're scared of what's going to happen. And they told me that we can't just ground to a halt. What do you want us to do? Do you want us just to sit in the house, never socialise again, and never go out? We've got to try and be as normal as we can. So it was interesting to hear from the Ukrainians and see what their perspective is. But they are they are worried, and they did say that they're prepared. They think it'll go for 10 years plus. Hopefully, hopefully that's not the case now that Trump's trying to sort of get it resolved. But it's sad to see. It really is sad to see.
It's sad to see all the war and terror that we have going on in the world, and you know we want to see peace. That's ideally we want to see peace. It's not
It's
it never have a good outcome. These wars.
No, it's young men who don't know each other dying for rich men that do. Basically, it's very sad to see.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's move into the Middle East and South Asia, place that you've spent quite a lot of time. Um, Callum, you've been on the ground in Gaza, Palestine. What did you see on the ground? What did you take away from the trip? Um, what did you think of the Palestinian people? Did you meet Israeli people? What did you think of them? Please, just the floor is yours because you can give a really good opinion. You've been there.
Um, well, when I first arrived, I remember I've got a big Pakistani following on my social media, and I remember there was a lot of backlash, and I was like, guys, just listen, like before you jump to conclusions, just listen because I'm going to go to like the West Bank, I'm going to go to Ramallah. Like the reality is, it's it's hard to describe when you're driving. Like when I was driving into Ramallah, which is the unofficial capital of Palestine, because obviously Jerusalem is the capital for them, but the official unofficial capital is Ramallah. So when I was driving in there, you see all the walls and the barbed wire and the divide. It's basically it's like the walls you see in Belfast that separate the communities. It's obviously very sad to see. When I spoke, the people were a little bit reserved initially when I'm walking about with my camera, which is understandable considering the situation. But when you spoke to them, I asked them, I said, "Do you think this will ever be resolved? Ever?" Like, and they say, "We pray that it will be resolved, but they don't think it will be. And there's no way that they will leave there." This is the Palestinians in Ramallah. They says, "There's no way we will ever leave here. This is our country. We love it, even if it's good." I remember that specifically. Someone says, "Even if it's good, even if it's bad, it's Palestine. We love it, and we'll never leave." And it's it's very sad to see because it's like I spoke to people in Tel Aviv, and they're like, "No, but I don't agree with all this. Like they don't agree with any of this war and the divide." And it's difficult because I think it's easy for some people to basically say like, oh, like you see it online and you do see it, it's like, oh, like f the Jews and like very anti-Jewish stuff. But I spoke to people and they're like, no, no, that's not me. Like I, again, they're a product. They're born there. What can they do apart from like maybe protest or try and help? But people can't help where they're born. So it was very it's very difficult to to put it into words how when I go online and I see a lot of things and I see it's like you see the bombings in Gaza, and I go, "There's nobody wants to see children getting blown to pieces. Nobody. I don't care if you're pro-Israel or pro this and that. It takes us like nobody wants to see that. Hopefully, I'd like to think so anyway. And
But there's a lot of people on record, Callum, now that we're getting that are actually on record of saying, they need to terminate all the Gazan children. These are leaders these words have come out of. That if that's the role models, you're right. You can't dictate where you're born, and then you're influenced by that. But I agree with you. This shouldn't be about the Jewish faith, and we shouldn't be anti-Semitic towards the Jewish faith. And we would be saying the same thing if it was Muslim, Christian, whatever it may be, background. But they are actually on record as saying this, that we have
Mm-hmm.
to term. So, like you, I agree with you. Most people you would think would be anti, never want to see any dead babies or what we've witnessed. But there is people that are saying that, and they seem to be allowed to just continue to do it. That's the part that's just I really struggle with it.
Yeah, I struggle with it as well. I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's like, oh, like I've had some messages saying, "Oh, they deserved it. They deserved it." Like since the October 7th, it's like I've had messages on some of my videos. Oh, they deserved it, and I'm like, listen, it's. I feel like sometimes you're banging your head against a brick wall. Nobody is saying that what happened in October 7th is right. Nobody's saying that. But there's
Of course,
innocent children. There's
millions.
I know innocent. There's always innocent casualties in war. I get that, but a lot of this could be helped. A lot of this could be stopped and prevented. It's just it's just not. That's what I can't wrap my head around. And the interesting thing as well is I spoke to some Palestinians and they told me, "Oh, I don't like Hamas. I don't like Hamas." Like some of them are very anti-Hamas. Um, some of them are for Hamas. It's interesting to listen to the people. There's a very wide range of opinions on the situation. I don't know how. Like, where do you go from here? So Trump's saying, "Oh, we're going to rebuild Gaza. We're going to do this. We're going to do that." Who is it they're rebuilding it for? For the Gazans, or is it for people to then move in? I don't understand how. I don't understand where they go from here. If I'm being honest with you, and I don't think. I mean, let's be honest. Let's be real with ourselves. You've got the Temple Mount, Al Aqsa. That's always going to be a focal point, like a very contentious point of that's where a lot of it stems from as well. How do you resolve it? I don't know. I honestly do not know. I think the outside world would have to then have a bigger influence on Israel and get them to toe the line. And are they going to do it? I don't know, because obviously America, Britain, Israel, they're all in tight together.
Well, I was just going to say they're all complicit and have been arming this, and it's only now, after what 19 months since October 7th. And by the way, I'm on record as saying this. What happened on October 7th and innocent civilians losing their life shouldn't have happened, but that does not justify all the innocent civilians, thousands of which a lot have been women and children. And I also don't just like to highlight women and children. There's also been a lot of men. They're human
Mhm.
beings as well. A lot of innocent people have lost their lives. But it seems that when does that number, when is that enough? And it seems now like perhaps some of the West are finding their conscience, and it seems like, maybe we should toe the line a little bit. But for now, this guy seems like he's not. He's Mr. Netanyahu does not seem like he's pulling the reins in. He doesn't seem to want a ceasefire. He doesn't seem to really, for me, care that much about the hostages. I just feel like it's about the land. And what's going to happen? Are they just going to kill millions of people to get that, and the world is just going to watch on? For me, that is
Well,
just
that's
unacceptable.
that's that's what I was saying. Like when they're saying about, oh, we're going to rebuild it, we're going to take it, we're going to rebuild it. But who is it? You're not saying clearly. Who is it you're rebuilding it for? Because there's going to be, I don't know what the exact population is of Gaza, or what it was. Let's say. But who are you building it for? Where are these people going to go first in the meantime? Are they going to then be allowed back? It's very there's nobody's coming right out with a straight answer, and I don't. It's sad because at the end of the day, we're all watching it. We're all watching it on TV, and I mean, try putting yourself in the position of the innocent family who's just their house blew up for no reason, no fault of their own, and now they're sort of not getting a clear answer of where to go. Are they allowed to go back? It's sad. It's very heartbreaking. And like he says, what happened in October the 7th? again, that should never have happened. You can't go about just killing innocent civilians. It's hard to see because someone like myself who travels and explores and speaks to people from all different sides of the communities, and I just sometimes wish I could bang my head against the wall and just think, is there no way we can just live in peace?
We both are basically advocating for here is peace, but nobody seems to know the answer. Every single day we're watching kids lose their lives, heads blown off, arms blown off,
Yeah,
it's it's hard. It's hard to witness. And whilst we sit here and we've got the safe comforts of the surroundings that we're in, we should, we should be grateful. But it doesn't take away the fact that it's too hard to witness this, and it wouldn't matter if it was happening to Jewish, Muslim, Christians. To me, it doesn't matter. Innocent lives are innocent lives, and nobody wants to see, especially children, losing their lives. You
yeah,
can see we're passionate about this subject, and ultimately we want peace. We want peace, and we want to see an end to these to what's going on in that part, in that part of the world.
yeah.
God will.
100%. Like I say, as someone who travels around the world and speaks to like lots of people from different backgrounds, different religions, and I just look at it. I go, how in 2025, how are we still seeing this, and how can we not get this resolved? Like, I honestly, as I sit here, I'm not going to say, oh, they could do this or they could do that because I mean, they've been trying for years. I honestly don't think in my lifetime it'll ever be resolved.
Enough. I've kept the good like some of the more. This is some interesting stuff, and this has got some darkness in it as well. But I want to start with the fun stuff. Um, Two countries that you've travelled to, who also have a huge conflict between them. Two countries I'm talking about is India and Pakistan. What I want to start. You can laugh because you are the centre of controversy. You're in the Indian media right now. You're in the Pakistani media. We'll talk about that. But I want you to start by just talking about going there as a tourist to start with. Before we get into all the other stuff, just tell me about how it was travelling to India, how it was travelling to Pakistan. Tell me about your travels.
Well, firstly, I had a great time. I'm always in Pakistan. Let's say that I'm always in Pakistan.
You're more
I love
Pakistani, Scottish Pakistani than
Pakistan's my favourite country to travel in, no doubt about it. It feels like a second home. The people are very
Pakistan.
friendly. The hospitality is the best that I've ever experienced. I've had great times in India as well. I've travelled around Azad, Kashmir. I've crossed over into India as well. Been to places like Srinagar, Jammu. The hospitality in Pakistan, I would honestly say, is second to none. But the more time I spend in Pakistan, the more hate that I get online from India. That's just fact. I can back that up by showing everyone my DMs. If you promote Pakistan, especially if you promote Azad Kashmir, you're going to get some flack, and that's just part of it. It's it's sad though because I had some great times. I spent I think 6 weeks last year in India, a month the year before that in India, and I was there the year before that. I've had some great times in India, and the majority of Indians were nice people. I had an amazing time living with a Hindu family in Haryana. But over the last year, it's sort of shifted, and I'm getting so much hate from India simply because I love Azad Kashmir. It is what it is. They won't stop me from promoting it or telling people how nice and how friendly the people are. So it's a sad situation as well. Obviously, recently in the recent situation where I'm online, I'm on Indian news. I think as of yesterday, I'm on every single news channel in India because I'm linked to Jyoti Malhotra, who the Indian government have said was a spy for Pakistan. I met Jyoti in the market in Lahore. We had a brief interaction. The Indian government are now saying that they're taking my video that I made, the vlog, and they're using it as evidence to say that she was getting preferential treatment in Pakistan. So they've got me all over the news at the minute, and it's not good because as someone who travels to all these different countries, a lot of these countries they'll Google my name. First thing that pops up is Callum abroad, like spy or espionage. So it's not good. Um, I've even got people deep diving me now on YouTube saying, "Oh, this Callum guy, he's been to Haryana, he's been to Jyoti's hometown. What's the connection? Is he working for the ISI?" I mean, the internet's a wild place. You get people with the tinfoil hats, and it's mental. But I do love Pakistan. It's it's a country where, again, I think that you grew up and it was always, oh, I would never go to Pakistan. Pakistan seems dodgy. In the early 2000s, Pakistan had a bit of a reputation, and even some Pakistanis will tell you that a lot of it was warranted. There was a lot of terrorism happening and harbouring in Pakistan in the early 2000s, around about the time of Osama bin Laden. But Imran Khan came in, he sort of changed it around. He wanted to open up Pakistan to the world. Things have changed. The Pakistani army, the amount of lives that the Pakistani army have lost fighting terrorism in the country, not promoting it, not helping it, but fighting against it. People don't talk about it, don't see it. The Western media, the Western media would never tell you, oh, six Pakistani army soldiers killed fighting terrorism. But if it was the opposite way, where there was a terrorist attack in Pakistan and it was like against me or something, it would be all over the news, because negativity sells. But Pakistan's done so much to sort of try and rid these terrorists out of the country and open up Pakistan for tourism and let people see it.
You talked about the hospitality. Um, I think you've paved the way. Actually, you're one of the original vloggers that went to Pakistan, and you've obviously made it like. I mean, we've talked. You've stayed over there for long periods of time. You'd quite happily, I think, live in Pakistan. You know, you're loved over there. Talk about the hospitality. Um, what was it like when you entered the airport and you got to Pakistan for the first time? What was that experience like for you?
I remember coming out at Islamabad airport, and if anybody watching this has been to Islamabad airport, you'll know exactly what I mean. When you walk out the back, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people lined up. They're all waiting on their family. It's a big thing in Pakistan when someone comes to visit. It's not just one person that goes to the airport to collect them. It's like a full family. It's like 10 people. So when you walk out the back, I
Nothing.
remember go, I remember going, oh wow, look at all these eyes, and everybody's staring at me, and I'm like, oh, and I was a little bit nervous, but you feel like a celebrity. I think everybody feels like a celebrity when you get off at Islamabad airport. But I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was a little reserved in the fact where I was thinking, right. I mean, I don't really know much about Pakistan. Obviously, I had a little bit of a reputation. I wasn't worried to go. I wasn't fearful, but I was just a little bit more like, in my mind, I was like, right, let's try and keep my wits about me here, sort of thing. So that quickly disappears though, because the reality is, as soon as you walk up to someone in Pakistan, Assalamu alaikum, the smile comes and they want to know where you're from. The next minute you're drinking tea with them, they're inviting you to their weddings. The the hospitality in Pakistan is phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. And anybody that watches my videos will see that I don't think I've ever had a I don't think I've ever had a bad altercation in Pakistan where someone sort of shunned me or like said anything bad to me. It's always very friendly and welcoming. And the big thing about Pakistanis is they want you to they want to make sure you're having a good time in their country. They want you to leave the country with a good impression. So if they can help you in the country, they will. So for me, out of all the countries, Pakistan is number one for hospitality.
Couple last questions. Out of everywhere you've ever been, where did you feel the most unsafe?
The most unsafe. Well, I mean, I've had in terms of life threatening because again, I've been to like Somalia. I've been to Iraq. There's other places that I've been to. Somalia was. I'm not going to say that was the most unsafe, but I'll say this: Somalia was the one country where I nobody wanted to speak to me. Even I put the camera. I put the camera in my pocket. It was hidden. I went to the local park. Nobody wanted to speak to me. I was trying to like very very bad vibe. Now I'm not saying I'm not saying I don't deserve that, or some. I know the people of Somalia have been through a lot recently, and to this day they're still fighting Al Shabaab. So they've still got an internal war going on. But that's one country where nobody wanted to speak to me. It was very lots of checkpoints. There was just like a sad vibe. Nobody wanted to talk to each other. There was no. You didn't really see a lot of smiling, happy faces or anything. So that was one country that I didn't particularly enjoy the experience. In terms of safety, um, I would say it's got to be. I would say it's out of two. It's got to be Ukraine or Colombia, Bogota. I certainly felt like my life was at risk that night in Bogota when I get chased. Um, that wasn't a good experience. I mean, they're physically chasing me under a bridge. It was late at night. There was no one about. A car stopped. The guy let me get into the car, and he took me to his house. And then he eventually he phoned a taxi for me. And he's like, "Don't come back here. Like, never come back here. It's too dangerous for you." So that was one time. I think if they had caught me, then what would the outcome been? Would I have just got robbed, or would I have been shot, stabbed? Like, who knows? But that was one time where I physically had to run. So I'll say Bogota for now, which is again that might sound crazy considering I've literally watched like the bombs and stuff in Ukraine, as you'll see on the YouTube video if you watch them. But that's one time I've actually physically had to run for my safety
What's a place that you absolutely loved?
that I absolutely loved. Again, the number one country for me is Pakistan, but my favourite city is Jerusalem. That is my favourite city. Pakistan overall beats it though because again the hospitality. I love the people are so welcoming, so friendly, and there's a sort of when you go into the villages in Pakistan, there's like a when you speak to the youth, there's a big like innocence. If that if you can understand that, like people are very curious. Maybe they've never seen your like tattoos, and they're very friendly. For me, it's Pakistan overall. It's got to be Pakistan.
Pakistan, Zindabad. Um, so, you've been detained in Afghanistan by the Taliban. You've gone viral in the middle of one of the biggest war conflicts in the world with Pakistan and India going on. You've been on the ground in Ukraine whilst conflict is going on with Russia. You've been in Gaza, West Bank. We know what's going on there. Um, you're some boy. But what's next for
Well,
Callum
I'll tell you
abroad?
what. There's no,
Reason
there's no,
looking.
there's nowhere rougher than Easter House. Nah, I'm joking. But next, I've got a few things in the pipeline. I want to try and get North Korea ticked off. I'll be back in Pakistan and Azad Kashmir. There's a few other places though. There's a few other places that I want to try and get to. I was planning on going back to the West Bank and Ramallah this week. However, due to all the sort of like the spy and espionage allegations that are on the news, I've sort of put that in the back burner for now, just because I know that's the thing. When I flew into Tel Aviv, I was detained. I was detained for 8 hours. They pulled out all the laptop, went through all the videos. Oh, you've been to Jordan. I went to a Palestinian refugee camp in Jordan. The Israeli authorities pulled that up and they're like, "Who's this guy? Are you Muslim?" I said no, and they're like, "Well, why are you in a mosque in Pakistan?" And they turned the video around and I'm standing in the mosque. And I was like, "Well, I would go to a synagogue as well, but if you let me out the door, but I'm not Jewish." A big emphasis on Pakistan. Why are you in Pakistan? Who do you meet in Pakistan? So if I go now, I know it's going to be even worse because of all the spy and espionage stories. So for now, it's going to be. I think initially I'll be back in Pakistan, Azad Kashmir. North Korea needs to get ticked off. I would like to probably see Iran. I would like to go to Iran and check Iran out fairly soon. I feel like now's a good time to go to Iran. There's more tourism happening there, so I try and sort of get in and get it done while things seem okay because you don't know. the reality is, people say, "Why are you going to these dangerous countries?" As it stands now, Afghanistan's let's take over the last 20 years. Right now is probably the most peaceful time in Afghanistan, so it was a good time to go. Um, so I try and gauge it when's right to go and when's wrong to go. The Ukraine thing though, that just happened. Nobody really thought it was going to last. I certainly didn't think it was going to last this long. Obviously, speaking to when the Ukrainians told me that it was going to last 10 years, I remember sitting going, "No chance, no way, that's going to last 10 years." But I think we're like what 3 years in or something.
Yeah, that must be a bit. I thought get maybe even more. Get time. You don't
Mhm.
realise how. Yeah, it must
You
be.
don't you don't
How
realize how long. And again, I didn't realize how we talk about October the 7th. It's a it's a date that gets through about, but when you actually think about it, and you go, "Wow, October the 7th, that's way back." Like you don't realize how long and how long these things have been going on for.
no, it's yeah. You don't. The days just keep passing by, and you don't realise it's it just becomes the norm, doesn't it? These conflicts are just becoming the norm in your day to day life, and it's not. It shouldn't be the norm. That's the sad part. We both clearly have advocated that for peace in the world,
Yeah.
and that's ultimately what we want to see. I have a dream to sit with you in the middle of Pakistan somewhere at some point in the near future and have a desi chai together. But let's start with Scotland first at some point. Let's get a cheese and onion pasty or something and a cup of coffee somewhere.
We'll
And
get
do
a cheese onion pasty and a can of iron brew, and then we'll go to Pakistan for some fantastic tea.
that's like for some fantastic tea. Absolutely, Callum. We could have probably talked for an hour, 2 or 3 hours. We probably only scraped the surface. So watch this space, everybody. Maybe part two at some point down the line for sure. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I think some of your stories just just blow me away, really. I can see why
Nice.
the audience connects so well. I watch a lot of your content. Um, I think you come across. You're just a likable guy, mate. There's no agenda with
Thank
you.
you.
Just go as you just go on your merry way. You travel and you take in all the experiences. I pray that you stay safe because some of these experiences you told me about today, I'm even frightened listening to them. So please be a wee bit, be a wee bit cautious if you can do that. And also just to my listeners, and anyone new that's come to, watch the podcast here today and has enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, give me a follow, give me some support, because I'm looking to put more and more content out like this. And there's already quite a bit on the channel that you can catch up with as well. But last words to you, Callum, before we tie up.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for listening to my dribble for a while. I will say to anybody who's watching this, if you do get the chance and you do have the means to do it, travel the world and see it with your own eyes, not through the media. And you will learn that the majority of people in this world are good, honest, hard-working people. It doesn't matter which country or which religion they're from. The majority of us have all got the same goals. That's financial freedom, security, safety for the family. So yeah, if you get the chance, explore